They could be murderers and thieves and so much else. So we want a safe country, and it starts with the borders. And that's the way it is. And again, we can do this very quickly if the Democrats come to the table.
The immigration debate reaching a boiling point across the country as outrage mounts over family separation at the border. President Trump will head to the Hill tonight ahead of the House votes on immigration bills. How can we find common ground? Here to weigh in, we've got a special panel, and I'll introduce you to them one at a time. First of all, can I see the hands of those of you who think we've got a big problem regarding immigration in this country? All right, y'all think it's a big problem. Can I see the hands of anybody who thinks that separating kids from their parents is a good idea? Okay, that's where we're going to start. We've got a problem, and it sounds like that big building behind you has the answer. But Chuck, it's politics, and you're a Democrat, you're a strategist. The Democrats and the Republicans right now are far apart.
This is a visual that nobody wants to see right now. Democrats don't want to see it. Republicans don't want to see it. And as a Texas Mexican that grew up in Texas, this is a very personal issue for my family who immigrated here. Many Americans' families immigrated here. Nobody wants to see a small child taken from their mother. And the problem, I think, is that people are playing too much politics on both sides. And what's suffering are the children and the mother in between. When you have mothers who are coming here, turning themselves in, not trying to sneak into the country, bringing little children with them saying we're fleeing for our lives, we should be doing more as Americans to stand up for them.
But David, it's not just politics, it's also the rule of law. Yesterday we heard from the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen, and we also heard from the president, said, look, these are the laws on the book, and we have a zero tolerance policy. We're going to enforce them.
Look, nobody likes the optics, and the optics are bad on this. But the problem is there hasn't been a lot of solutions, Steve. Yeah, the emotion has been played out, and especially around Father's Day, the ripped from their, families issue played out. Democrats push that. But what about the solutions? There have been loopholes put in place, contradictory laws put in place, structures and processes that have not worked. And the Democrats primarily, and Republicans to blame for some of this on their part, have not done anything about it for 2 administrations now. This is not a new problem. The optics the Democrats pushed was the day one that President Trump came in, suddenly concentration camps were built, internment camps were built. It's dishonest, and it doesn't go to the solution. And we need real honest brokers who want to tackle the problem and fix the many aspects of it. And by the way, if you want asylum, there are ways to do it legally. Crossing the border illegally is not seeking asylum.
And you look just at the facts, and of the 12,000 kids who are currently being held by the federal government, 10,000 of them, Wendy, came into the country alone. So they were separated before they even got to the United States. You are the mother of a woman who was killed by somebody who was in this country illegally. You think about this all the time.
Every day.
So how do you fix it?
I just hope that President Trump continues down the path of fixing the problem. The separation of children and moms and dads is very sad, but they wouldn't be abused. They would be taken care of. But if your parent, if you come into the country illegally, that's a crime. So you've committed a crime. So
do you understand what the president is doing by saying, okay, we're going to enact the laws, we're going to enforce the laws of the land, separate the families if they try to come into the country illegally?
If that's what has to be done, I mean, I wouldn't want any. My daughter was brutally murdered, and it's the last thing a mother and father want to do is bury their own child. And this man was supposed to be deported 3 times. He had already been in jail for attempted murder.
Oh my goodness.
And he got out, and ICE let him go that very same day, and he killed my daughter 5 months later.
All right.
So.
I know. Our heart is with you. Michael Wilds is an immigration attorney, friend of the show, been on a million times talking about these issues. Michael, we can see the problem. There are big problems with immigration. Too many people come into the country illegally. Too many people are here. They don't have status. How do we fix it?
Well, first, I should say it's a privilege to be here. And Wendy, my heart goes out to you over your extraordinary loss. Thank God the overwhelming amount of people coming to our country are not murderers, are not criminals. And we have to fix this system. It's an extraordinary system, and there's a disingenuousness on both sides. Parents that would shield themselves with children, and yet nations that won't absorb our, the citizens of the world that are in harm's way. Yeah. It's really up to Congress and the president to step up. The inhumanity of what we're seeing now at detention centers.
But Michael, the two sides are so far apart. They're so dug in. They realize if we pass something, then we don't have that issue.
Well, they have to fix this because it goes to the onboarding of foreign students into our workforce. It goes to the very ethos of what our founding fathers established, a nation of immigrants. We're shooting ourselves in the foot if we don't get this right, if we don't invest in those tired, poor hands that will not only salute our flags.
The times are different. I'm sorry, Michael, but we have to put time and milieu into this. A time when people were coming here, when we had open lands, a much wider issue. We have different issues today. The problem is mixing 2 million a time of the Statue of Liberty, of people coming here for a different reason, a different time, versus today.
Well, let's talk
completely different.
Okay, let's talk to a fellow in the front row, Jose Magana Salgado. He's an immigrant legal resource center. He's also a DACA recipient. Jose, it sounds like the president is going up to Capitol Hill later today to talk to House Republicans about the two bills. One of the things he wants to do is come up with a bill that protects people like you who are in the country with dreamer status.
You know, as a DACA recipient, being here in the country for 30 years, going to a Christian Baptist law school and working with 4,000 DACA recipients in my similar situation through the Dream US, we want this problem resolved. But we don't want a roadmap to citizenship that comes at the expense of other immigrant populations. Drastically cutting legal immigration, having taxpayers and not Mexico pay for a $23 billion wall, and gutting our asylum system, ending family separation by ensuring that kids are incarcerated with their parents. That is what the bills on Capitol Hill would do. Congressional Republicans are simply undermining President Trump. We need immigration reform that doesn't gut our asylum system, that recognizes that people under the Immigration and Nationality Act can come to this country fleeing persecution legally apply for asylum.
Chain migration.
Family migration is something that this country was built upon. Many of the people, including lots of the people that work on Fox News, have relatives and ancestors.
Because you know, for every time one person gets in, they can bring in 30 family members as well, and that's a big problem.
Good? Family reunification was a hallmark of our immigration laws. Reuniting family. You're going to work harder no matter what station in life. If you're a lawyer, if you're a farmhand, if your family's there. Chain migration became a dirty word. Family reunification is a beautiful principle.
But we ignore the economics of this, and the fact is you cannot absorb all of the world's problems. You cannot support it financially. And if you bring this country down economically by importing poverty, when you bring people in who are incapable of taking advantage of what we provide in America, in the American dream and opportunity, then how do we actually sustain the nation to help other nations? We're ignoring the macroeconomic and the microeconomic effects of this, because if you can't afford the problem, then America suffers.
One of the problems is crime, and Patrick Ryder is in the front row. He's the Nassau County Police Commissioner. And Commissioner, one of the big problems is MS-13, and a lot of the people who are in your area in MS-13 came into the country illegally.
We had 6 murders last year from MS-13, vicious attacks, with 3 of those 6 were decapitated, 4 of them were buried in shallow graves, almost like they were taunting us to catch them. 3 of those kids were 15, never had a chance. Innocent kids growing up, good, hardworking parents here out in Nassau County. Our problem is communities. If we lose our communities when we go and we fight this immigration and we fight this MS-13 issue, we have to still strengthen those community bonds. If we lose them, we lose our community. With a 17% population, Hispanic, growing in Nassau County, we have to maintain those relationships.
And one of the problems is with all these people who come in, and if they're not properly vetted, and we've heard a million stories about that, sometimes that is a problem. It all comes down to politics. And we know that before the elections, that would be a great time to solve it. But can I see the hands of people here today who thinks President Trump honestly wants to solve the immigration problem? All right, we got 5, except Chuck, the Democratic strategist. How many think the Democrats honestly want to solve the problem? 2, 3. All right, who think the Republicans honestly want to solve the problem?
I'm going to go halfway.
You got 4 right there. It all comes down to politics. Chuck, you didn't hold up your hand for anything. You get the final word.
I think that a lot of this has to do with a lot of emotions, but the emotions are real people's lives. I think everybody had a good point. There's a couple points. Just because a brown kid is an MS-13 don't mean every brown kid is bad.
Of course
and the
not.
macroeconomics of this is my family came here undocumented generations ago, and now I pay hundreds of thousands of federal income tax every year. That shows that the system can work.
Wendy?
I just wanted to say one thing. I feel sad for families that are torn apart, but I'll never be able to see Casey again in this lifetime. She's permanently separated from me. It's like I'm living in my own personal hell because I can't see my daughter. I can't talk to my daughter. I can't do everything that a mom and a daughter should be doing. She's never going to get married. She's never going to have children. You know, they talk about dreamers. Well, Casey had dreams too. And now there's no way she'll be able to do that.
It is a gigantic problem, and our nation needs to address it, and we need to fix it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. This panel will